What effect does coffee roasting have on the flavor of coffee? Hi, I'm Jay. Welcome back to the Coffee Q&A, where we do a live stream practically most mornings at 10 a.m., depending on how things go. But this past week, we were doing a testing on freshly roasted coffee and the effects of CO2 degassing on the flavor of coffee. Now, today, we're going to round that out, finish out Fresh Coffee Week. With this last episode, we are now 7 days past the roasting date. So last Monday on the live stream, if you wanted to go back and look at that, we actually roasted the coffee and then we tasted it and got a baseline of different flavors. And we were talking back then about notes of tobacco, leather, cacao, some light cinnamon, like a canela type of cinnamon, medium to light body, nice clean finish. But as the week progressed, we started getting a lot of occlusion in the flavors. Actually, the craziest thing about this past week, it's really challenged my professional position about QC coffee test of QC coffee cupping, which is QC meaning quality control. So typically how it works in most roasting operations is that we'll roast the coffee and then the next day, the team will come together and cup the coffees that we roasted the previous day to see if there's any kind of aberration, any kind of issue. But I tell you what, based on what we tasted this past week, that first 24-hour period, the first day after when we would normally do QC quality control cupping, the flavors were really messed up. I described it as, what did I say? I said it was grotesque. It was not a melange, but really just kind of, mangled. There was a mangled flavor, and it was just like, wow, really, really crazy. So on today, we're going to wrap up the Fresh Coffee Week with the last cupping to see what is it like 7 days out of the roaster. So this is day 7. I did cup the coffees over the weekend, or not cup, I brewed them over the weekend, of course, following what we've been doing using the V60, because this is kind of how normal people or most people would probably drink it. And I'll tell you what, the coffee has definitely improved since Tuesday and has become much nicer. So I'm expecting it to be quite good. Like one of the nice things by Saturday, well, maybe not. You can see here that the lid is slightly popped open. And I did on Sunday yesterday, I did make sure that it was nice and tight. So there is still some degassing happening. Like the other day, early on, it really had popped it, but the aroma is still very nice, getting a little bit more of that roasty cinnamoniness to it. But one of the things I discovered on a personal note is that I really don't like the V60 as a personal brewing device, right? Like, I know a lot of people use it and it's a great brewing device, but here's the thing. So like, really, I just want to come and have breakfast, maybe a cereal or maybe a concha, right? And I don't really want to sit here and brew. I just want to walk away, come back in a few minutes, and then it's done. So really, I like the immersion brewers, like the Avid Clever, the Bonavita, or maybe even the Hario. What's the one? The Hario, you know the one. Something, whatever the name is, Hario. The one that's too small. Anyway, I like that because I can just go do what I want to do. Maybe heat up the concha, pour the bowl of cereal, and then come back in a few minutes after the timer starts to beep, and then I can just drink and enjoy myself instead of having to sit here for 5 minutes. But today we're going to do that because, well, that's what we do, right? In a professional setting, I mean, I'm happy to do that. If you come to the cafes and we're going to make you coffee, we're going to do it in a way that is made just for you. But for myself, I'm not too worried. What's going on, Dan? How are you doing? Thank you very much. Hario Switch. Yeah, thank you. I knew one of you guys would know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so let's get to the brewing. Let's have a look at, I need to turn this back on. One of the things I always forget to do is to turn on the overhead camera. But let's have a look at our, there we go. Here's our coffee. We need to boost up the ISO. There we go. Brian, what's going on, Brian? Where does French press fall into all of these? Actually, French press is considered immersion, because it is you basically immersion brewing is considered, because immersion brewing is basically taking the coffee and steeping it in water hot, right? And so whether you're using the Hario switch, the Avid Clever, the Bonavita, or the French press, the process is still the same. The big difference between the switch, so if we group the switch, the Vita, and the Avid Clever together and keep the French press separate, the difference between the two is that the three of them have paper filters that you run the coffee through when you're finished steeping it, and that gives clarity to the coffee because it's pulling out, that paper filter is filtering out the minor sediments as well as the essential oils that will be left behind in your cup if you use the French press. So those are the big difference. So if you like that extra body from the extra siltiness of the French press and you want a little bit of those oils, then go with the French press. But if you want to get rid of those and have more of a clean cup, a little bit better clarity, then go with the other ones, right? What's going on, Mom? How you doing, man? Good to see you. How's things up in Queens? All right, so let's get our coffee here. This is our coffee, right? So we're going to measure out some coffee here. As always, you probably know already that we're going to do 24 grams. Okay, higher ISO is not helping us there. Oh, that's too much. All right, there we go. 24 grams. Now we're going to grind that in our compact R80 grinder. All right, there we go. So medium grind, give us a nice little bit of resistance to the coffee. Now what are you using? Oh, we're using. Gosh, I'm already forgetting. We're going to use our Yama brew kettle with the Hario V60 in the clear plastic. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a. Oh, there it is. I only use this for live streams and videos. And as you can see, it's starting to get a little bit of cloudiness to it. Or I don't know if you can see that on camera, but to my eye, compared to how it was, it's starting to get a little bit of cloudiness. And that's the thing when you're using these polycarbonate or plastics, there's going to be some level of dulling over time. Like if you see our Clevers here, they're pretty much translucent rather than transparent. And that's just going to happen. It's a shame. I wish I had the glass. Like I want to have the glass one, but glass costs more. This is cheap. All right. So again, we're going to take our paper filters, and of course you can use the Hario filters, and we have them here. I don't really know why we don't use them because there's part of me that's cheap, and I just want to use the Melita number 4s that would fold over, right? Like this, and that just gives you a cheaper option. You can buy these filters at Costco for like, several dollars for 400, and they work just as well as far as brewing goes. So we're going to put that in here. We're going to add our coffee, level it out, and then let's get our brew kettle. I think I hear a lot of text messages on my phone. All right, so let's zero out our scale. And we're going to come in. Oh, we need our timer. All these gadgets are sometimes hard to remember. All right, so let's start a timer. And again, we're going to go 25 grams or so before we have the fall. Try to get the coffee as well saturated with those first 25 grams as possible. There's these Japanese masters, like 20, it's starting to fall already. Like there are these Japanese masters that use these type of pour overs, and they're so like meticulous. Like the guy from Chate Hato in Tokyo's Shibuya district, like it takes him 15 minutes to do a pour over for his like high-end pour over. and he's adding such minuscule amounts of water. Like I watched him like once, and I was just so fascinated by it. It's like, I mean, really, it takes him 15 minutes to brew a pour over. All right, so now 57. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm just pulsing because I'm just talking. Let's raise the water bed just a little bit. Good, like that. We're gonna. Dan says, your coffee looks well sorted. How would you say coffee tastes when there's too much variation in size and density? Can it result in desirable blend of flavors, or is it usually a defect? So, here's the thing. When you're doing coffee, buying it green, the coffee itself, let me rewind. So when after you finish processing the coffee is encapsulated in something we call parchment and pergamino. And you let it rest and dry out in the pergamino for like, well, it depends what part of the world you're in. In Central America, it's usually a typically period of like 30 days or more. And we're now 2 minutes, and we're running behind. I'm going to go a little bit heavier here. We're going to catch up, but without raising. I'm going to try to catch up without raising the water level too high. Like I said before, in previous brews, we want to keep the water level relatively at the same level. But I want to speed up a little bit because I don't want to go too slow, right? Because now we're at 215 and only not even 200 milliliters of water. Bring that back up to that level. Good. Now, when the coffee's in the parchment, we don't really know what it looks like, relatively speaking. Like we have a good, depending on who the farmer is and how they've handled their crops, we have a rough idea. We have a good idea if it's going to be nice, but we really don't know. No one really knows until you mill off the parchment and you get to the actual green coffee. All right, 2 minutes. Oh, we are running pretty slow. Me and my talking gets me in trouble. This is why I actually like to make it in the immersion, because I can talk and I don't have to worry about it anymore. But we're going to push a little bit forward. 3:15. Oh, the pressure's on. Look at that. The pressure's all right. Like there's a part of me that just wants to run and gun it now and just hit it, like drop all the 350 in there. But we don't want to raise it too high. We want to keep it just kind of at the edge as close as possible. 3:30. Now we're in the danger zone. Now the pressure's on. The pressure's on. Will we make it? Will we make it? No, we're not going to make it. We're essentially screwed at this point. But luckily come on, baby. Come on, baby. A little bit more. 350. Okay, there we go. 350. 347. Come on. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. 4 minutes is now. 350. All right. So we still have a little bit of liquid or water here to flow through. What is that guy, Stephen He's father on YouTube say? Failure. Hiya. This is not a fuyo kind of moment. This is a hiya. All right, so we're pretty much done now. We're going to see that's done. 4 minutes, 26 seconds. I'm going to say that we're going to expect a little bit of over extraction. Let's rinse out our. Oh, well, sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you just got to roll with it. So here's the thing. So like in a professional environment, this is my belief at least, right? So when you're making coffee for guests or serving guests in any way, like there's going to be little aberrations that of missed perfection, right? You're not always going to be perfect. We're all human, right? I think that a lot, and if it's really egregious, like if the imperfection is really egregious, then we'll just redo it. But I think with minor imperfections, I think a lot of that is smoothed over by the way that you care for your guests. That's my belief. And so we always try to train our staff that we want to make sure that we're, nurturing while nourishing, right? And so, those are important concepts, so that, in case there's a little bit like this one, maybe a few seconds over, maybe it's still pretty good. Perhaps the customer or the guest will forgive that little aberration if they're well cared for. Oh, so back to what I was saying. So once it's in the pergamino, we don't really know. So we have to mill it and release the coffee from the pergamino, and then we can see exactly what the bean sizes are. And so, like you're saying, the coffee looks well sorted. Thank you. This is that's all part of the purchasing of the coffee, right? So, you're going to, the better sorted, meaning that the more uniform the size, the cleaner the coffee, the less defects. That's because they're going to spend more time sorting your coffee, bringing it to those standards. So you're going to pay a premium on that, right? So every step towards quality costs more. Like if I showed you actually, let me grab a sample. It's just not too far away, so. Like here is a coffee that I got from some friends in Hawaii, from Rusty's Hawaiian Ka'u. And they give us, this is actually samples I've had at the shop for many years. And what this is, these are CBB sorted Ka'u coffee. And basically that means that as they were doing the sorting, they would pull out any of the defects. And those defects were set aside. And I said, hey, can I get some of those defects? Because honestly, the reality is, in my little tiny world of coffee that I've been in for the last 20 years, I've really only worked with beautiful coffees, really just bought really nice, high quality coffees. I've never really worked with this kind of coffee, like the commercial stuff that you find in many different operations around the world, because we're just in that niche, right? And so for me to get samples like this is always kind of fun. Like when I go to Uganda to work with the Uganda Coffee Development Authority, they actually release all the coffees across the country. So everything comes to them. So I'm always like, hey, do you have that? Can I get a bag of that commercial grade stuff? But let me show you this so this, as you can see here, there is like this bean here is different than that in size than this one, right? You can see variations in bean size. You can see different levels of damage. Like this one is a very heavily damaged coffee bean from CBB. When CBB is coffee berry borer, and it's also called La Broca in Spanish. And you'll see here that there are lots of broken-ins, and like what the CBB does, it gets in the coffee and it burrows through it and eats it. So if you're like, if we talk about like in terms of, for those of you guys that are from the cigar side of things, we always talk about the little cigar beetles that eat their way through the cigar. Well, this is the same thing, not the same mite, but it's a different bug, but it is the same concept of it burrowing through the bean and destroying. So a lot of times when you get coffee that you're out there in the world and you're trying it, like let's say at your local diner is a really great example. You'll get the coffee and it has this really kind of earthy muddiness to it. That's typically due to coffee that has CBB damage, right? That's a classic flavor from CBB damaged coffee. And so usually when I go out to eat at a lot of places, that's really what I taste. I taste a lot of CBB damage, some, like blacks and partial sours and things like that. But those are a little bit harder to discern. The CBB damage is much easier. All right, let's go back to the coffee before it cools down too much. So here's our coffee. Final day. Let's pour it out. Oh, let me do a little stop here so that I can give you the movie style, so you can see like we're coming from different angles. All right, there's the coffee right there. Ooh. Nice and clear. The other part that Dan was asking, can it result in desirable blend of flavors, or is it usually defect? The difference in size. So if presuming the coffee is clean, it should have consistent flavor. Could. Now you can have differences in flavor from plot to plot within a farm. So let's say you have a 10-acre farm and that's on the mountain, and it's at different elevations of that mountain. And I don't mean like necessarily thousands of feet. I'm talking about maybe 100 feet, right? And different exposures to sun. I mean, the differences in flavors can be pretty significant in that respect. But you won't, as long as the coffee's nicely sorted and doesn't look like this stuff, you should have relatively clean and consistent flavor. All right, so let's have a taste, or let's have a sniff. We still have that kind of brightness on the nose. Maybe a light cinnamon. It's juicy. Still a little bit on the tannic side. There's still a little bit of tannic on the sides of the palate. I think now we're back to some of that tobacco, some of that leather, cacao nibs. Not really cacao as in like cacao, like chocolate, but more that nibs. When you eat the cacao nibs, like the crunched up cacao nibs, that's kind of the representation that I'm tasting here. It's very clean now. It's very like it is quite a bright coffee. This is probably the brightest coffee that we inventory. Mainly because I'm not really a bright coffee person, but I think this has a nice brightness to it to utilize in blends. Yeah, it is a juicy coffee, like that kind of that juiciness that you get on your palate when you're eating like Jolly Rancher candies. It kind of has that kind of juiciness production, but not flavor, right? A lot of people will say things like, "Oh, it tastes like sour apple Jolly Rancher candy." It has that Jolly Rancher candy juiciness activation, but it doesn't have a flavor of a Jolly Rancher. It's more about, still back with that tobacco, that light canela. Cacao. Yeah, I wouldn't really describe any of it as fruity or anything like that. All right, so not bad. It's nice. And so 7 days out, I think we really started getting closer to this profile by Saturday. Sunday for sure, yesterday. Today, much cleaner, much nicer. This is really much more on the line of what we would like for our customers to receive and to drink, rather than that mangled grotesqueness that happened on Tuesday. And then, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they were all pretty rough. The flavors weren't really that great and really exciting. Saturday, it was starting to become a little bit more apparent. Sunday, more so. Today, much better, much better. A week later, definitely is a nice spot. And then Brian says, Dan, I had to mute the sound. I'll listen to the recording, blah, blah, blah. Oh, gotcha. The assumption is the more you pay, the better sort it is. But yeah. So in many respects, the more you pay, the better the quality of the coffee. But here's the thing. So it's like, and this is kind of some of the issues that I have with our own industry is that, like you can get very nicely sorted, very nice quality. We're talking 80 plus, maybe like 82, 83, 84 coffees. And they can range anywhere between, let's say, $1.90 to $2.50 a pound. So you can get really nice quality coffee for not tremendous amounts of money. But I still have been involved in conversations with green buyers that were talking about, nicely sorted coffee, let's say 82, 83 quality coffee. We're in country at a place that we've known, and the producer wants $2.35 a pound. Not a tremendous amount of money. $2.35 a pound. What does that work out to? So let's say you were to buy a full container, right? And depending on how you set it up, but $2.35. We multiply that by, let's say, 40,000 pounds for a full container. $94,000, right? In the world of coffee, that's not a tremendous amount of money. I mean, yes, $94,000 is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. But on the per pound level, if you're buying it by the bag, $2.35 for a coffee that's decent quality, good quality, with from a farmer that you've had a relationship with for many years. I've heard people talking about, oh, we could instead of buying this coffee, we could fly down and get similar quality, similar cup scores for $1.90. And I get it, you want to save them, but it's also like, is part of the reason that we're having relationships with farmers is to further both of our efforts, not just our own. So I don't know. Those are some of the things that I always wrestle with in my mind as a dichotomy, because we have so many companies that are like that their storyline is, we're here to help the farmer, right? We want to help the farmer, and they want to give you these ideas of them working with campesino farmers that are like bootstrapping themselves out of the mud and all of this kind of thing. But reality, I don't think it's like that. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm honest with them, because Spro has never talked about that kind of thing. Like, we're not here to tell you that we're helping the farmer. We're not helping the farmer. Like, I don't even know if we're helping them. The more that I've been involved in the industry, the less I'm convinced that we do. In certain cases, sure. I'm sure you can find many cases where people say, oh, this helped. And I'm sure that's true. But like, for example, let's say if you're a quality-based roaster, you need consistent quality year in, year out, right? You can't build a reputation on vagaries within the qualities of your production stream. And so you have to, I mean, invariably you end up working with, families people whose operations are the best in the country tend to be from the 1% of that country. And so if you're like, I'm here to help the poor campesino, and you're buying from the 1%, well, I don't know how that helps. I don't know how that. Anyway, enough of that politics. Anyway, so Fresh Week is finished. Tomorrow we're going to move into more different coffees, and I've got these coffees for the next couple of days that come from Jerusalem, from a place called Cafe at the Jerusalem market. And so a friend of mine, Muddy, he's like, he's Israeli, and so he was like, man, I love these coffees. I want you to try them. So he brought a couple bags, and of course he's like, try them, give them back to me. No problem, dude. No. So he had one of his friends was traveling to Israel. He said, hey, bring some back for me. So he brought some back, and so now he brought it for me, and now we're going to share it with you tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, the next 2 days will be Israeli coffees, kosher coffees, and then we got more coffees to taste and more brewers to check out. And I got a comment today from one of our viewers that was like, hey, man, your AirPress XL technique is terrible. Oh, thanks, Phil. You're right. It is. It's terrible. He's like, you need to wait 2 or 3 minutes of steeping. So we'll have to come back and revisit that AirPress recipe sometime in the near future. But all right. So that's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Good to see you, Brian, Dan, Mom. Always happy to see you guys around. If you have any questions or comments, if you're watching this on the replay, let me know down below, and blah, 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 blah. Subscribe, bell, whatever you want to do. I'm not too worried about it. All right. So back again tomorrow, 10 a.m. See you then. Have a good one.